Hey guys, this is Thigh Company here. Welcome back, everybody. This is part two of the Why High School Sucks video series. To kind of give as a brief reminder, the reason that we have this series ongoing is pretty much to discuss issues that were present back when I was in high school, people, and also with people that I know who are either recent graduates of high school or currently going through high school. Um, and first thing we want to do was we want to address some questions. People were commenting down below, some comments regarding their experiences of high school. So, first question, which was sent in by somebody called the Collector. The question was asking, then do you want to end school at grade 9? Would I want to end school at grade 9? I don't think so. Um, it's sort of a weird situation where it's like, do you want for people to have the option to end school early? Meaning, some people call it dropping out of high school, and I mean, there's different names to call it. I don't like the term dropping out. Um, because it sounds there's this like negative connotation with it. Um, but in other countries, they have their high school system a little differently. For example, I've heard of some places having 11 classes. I can't remember which countries off the top of my head, but I think, for example, in Russia, I've heard it's either 11 or 10, depending on where you are. But 10 classes is what I've heard. So I think by the time you're 16, you essentially are finished with high school. But they have a little bit slightly different system. I think they considered you to be an adult at 16 years of age, versus in the United States, it's 18 years of age. And usually by the time you finish high school, you're 18 years old, or just around that area. So that's to address that first question. But no, I don't believe we even addressed the idea of wanting to end high school early. Um, we were kind of more interested in how you would change high school. And um, the first thing that we'll want to address, so first thing are the issues. Um, Looking back at my experience, I think the first issue that comes in mind is the time of day when the whole school starts. The way they have their school scheduling here, or at least back when I was in school, you had to get up early. Usually, it was like, I think the earliest I can think of was 4:30 in the morning. So you catch the at about bus would come around 5:15, and I know some people it's later, but still 5:15 is pretty crazy, I think, because by the time they go and round up all the kids at the different stops, and I was kind of far away, or I lived far away from the school at the time, and usually we would get to the school about, I think it was like 6:15, no later than 6:30, and you would sit there. A lot of people would go get breakfast. Most people would just chat in the hallways and everywhere besides going to class early or studying. And then classes would start at 7:15 in the morning. And my school, because we had so many students, I know we had over 1,000. I don't know if we had over 2,000 or not. Ours was probably around the 2,000 range. And then one of my friends who later went to the school, he claimed that they boosted the student population, or student body rather, to like 3,500. But that was like, let's see, I graduated 2014. His was like around 2016 or 2018 or something or other. I've heard of it now being as far as it being as big as like 4,500, 5,000 students. So, that's a crazy big number. And so they basically divide the lunches up into 3 or 4 different periods because they can't have the whole student population being at lunch at the same time. And they had like lunch as early as 9 in the morning to as late as like 1 in the afternoon, depending on what group you fell in. So there was always this kind of like weird mix up of times with that. And then school would end at, I think it was like 2 or 2:15 was when the school ended. Compared to a lot of other schools, like elementary schools, it's like 3:15, 3:30. And I always remember growing up being like at 3, but 2 was sort of a weird experience because it's like, well, you get out earlier, but you had got to get in earlier. So, that was kind of the trade-off. And, some people preferred that, but I was looking back at it now, I'm not too crazy about that idea. But compared to other countries, from what I've been reading, some people start at like 8 or 9, and then they end early at maybe 1, sometimes 2. But, getting to school at like 6 o'clock in the morning and then leaving as late as like 3:30. Well, see, it depends on like what's going on in your situation because it's kind of specific, but I'm kind of generalizing the whole thing. So there are some discussions about the fixing of the school scheduling, the times, because that's just, to me, it's like a really weird situation to be, having kids coming in, especially so many kids coming in so early in the morning, blocking and messing up traffic around the school. And then you got, kids driving to school, driving there early in the morning, to me is kind of crazy. So yeah, that's the first issue, is like, how would you go about even rescheduling everything? And what I do like, and someone has pointed out to me, is that in other countries, they don't have classes that are that long as compared to what it is here in the US. And in my experience, I think typically the classes were like an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes maybe. But I've heard of it being as long as like 2.5 hours. And we also had this weird, crazy system, which was like we had A-Day, B-Day classes. But when I was taking, like, I think it was my freshman year, they had us all like take 2 or 3 classes with the same teacher. It was like we had freshman seminar, English, some kind of like reading, English writing, or I think it was like literature and some kind of writing in freshman seminar. Plus, they had this thing called enrichment, which was like you go to a certain class, and with that enrichment, I think it's like half an hour or 45 minutes extra where they're supposed to enrich you, which is probably another episode, where they basically talk about things related to preparing you for like the SAT test, the ACT tests, general like education stuff, which is supposed to be like helping you pass the exams for the college entrance exams and all that. But most people I knew just thought it was a waste of time. And so, that's another issue, is like how long the classes got to be. And I've actually was doing some research, and I found out in some countries, what they do is they don't have these like massive 8-hour school days or 8 or 9-hour school days. But what they do is they try to make it short. Some places I've heard of it being 6 hours. The shortest I've heard was 4 hours, but I think 4 hours maybe, I don't know. I'm not sure about the 4-hour thing, but it's what they do is I think it's like they do 2 or 3 hours, then they give you like an hour or two for lunch, and then another 2, 3 hours, and then you go home. or something like that. But they shorten the classes to like half an hour or 45 minutes or something like that. And the idea behind it is that they pack more classes into the school day, um, versus in most high schools, I think it's like four. It used to be more in the past. I've heard of it being as many as 6 to 8 classes in a school day, but it's like four now, or four blocks, or four periods is what they call it. But in other schools, they make short classes and they pack like 6 to 8 classes. I've heard of it being as many as 10, but to me, 10 seems a lot. And the idea is that you get exposed to more education and throughout the day. Um, so yeah, that's basically the second topic with the issuing with how long classes are. Um, Next issue is the homework, projects, and basically assignments is what I call it. Um, Back when I was in high school, I had so many assignments for every single class, and then we had the A day, B day classes, which was like one day you have this set of classes, the other day you have another class. And A day, B day basically is like every other day you have this class versus that class, which gets confusing when it's like then the weekend where you have like, say, class Friday afternoon, and then assignment is not due until like Tuesday of the next week. Um, which can cause some issues with trying to remember when assignments are due and this and that, which I also thought was problematic as well. And then they do this like semester thing where it's like somewhere middle of the year they change everything, but then they have quarterly changes as well, where it's like every 90 days or something you're supposed to change something. But like, for example, I know UMaine is doing like a dual system or something like that, where he has A day, B day, but then he has quarterly grades, and then he also has, um, I think it's called biannual grading periods, where it's like midway through the year they grade everything. But I don't know, it just gets confusing. They don't make it simple. They always have to have this complex system because they gotta give you as much information as they can to prepare you or whatever. So I thought that was always ridiculous. Um, so that's like another issue, is this whole scheduling and time management issues. Um, and then I think the reason why they have high school so early is because, one, the after school curriculum stuff. So all the kids who play sports, they got to have an hour, 2 or 3 of training. Then they got the games that are playing, and by the time they finish the whole games and everything, it's like what, 8 p.m., 9 p.m. I've heard of it being as crazy as kids finally getting out of their sports at like 10 or 11 p.m. just to go home and then get up at like 5 or 4:30 in the morning to get to school the next day. I mean, that's just, that's crazy. When are they going to sleep? When are they going to do their homework or assignments, whatever they want to call it? Study for the tests and the projects and all that. Like UMaine, I know, for example, he's got his soccer thing where he studies or goes to soccer practice. Then he's got to go talk to his friends or something, and then he gets home at like 10 or 11 in the evening, and it's like a every single day type of deal. And I just find that crazy. And there's got to be a new system to fix that. Um, Another issue is that, like, the purpose of high school. What are you doing with high school? Um, and this whole like sports obsession, I find that to be kind of crazy. I think it's getting worse and worse nowadays. It's like certain people are going to high school not to study or not to learn anything other than being the best performer in some kind of sport, just so they can get into college for only that sport. And then with that college, they hope and pray they get into sports teams and make money based on their skills of a sport. In the US, that I find that to be pretty problematic. But if when so much money is being made in that, what can you do to change it? No one wants to lose their money, so you can't really change that too much. But I almost feel like, well, if that's the case, you should be having instead sports programs versus it being like a general education type of deal, or most high schools a general education. I mean, that there should be like a specialty sports school, which in other countries that's what they have. They have sports schools, or what do they call it? Not gym schools. Like it's specialty schools versus it being placed into the middle of a general high school, or they create these huge high schools where they try to do everything at once. So yeah, that's another concern. Um, let's see what else has been going. Oh, so yeah, finding your purpose in high school is not easy because a lot of people I've talked to, they just feel like they're forced into high school and kind of like put through a blender, so to speak, I guess. And that idea of being put through a blender is, it's not pleasant. Um, and they complain that, oh, high school is supposed to be this place where you learn about yourself and you figure out what you want to do with your life. But that's not the case, really, because you're supposed to, now looking back at it, supposed to know ahead of time, like, and this is if you want to be successful in a certain area. Or if you basically should have a plan of what you want to do with your life before high school starts. And this is typically done in middle school with some cases. Um, now, what tends to happen is a lot of children tend to follow the profession or the occupation of the parents. So it becomes like a family job. Like, oh, dad's a doctor, mom's a nurse. So if it's, the children have to be doctors. So, they make more money and that's what everybody knows. And the whole family supports that one single system. So that means that the kids have to take all AP classes and as much medical classes as they can so that they can get their college credit and get all A's, because they have to get all A's and get all that GPA plus bonus points for whatever difficulty of class they have and become valedictorian, so they can get into Harvard or all those top schools, so they can get into medical school and then continue the family tradition of being a doctor. I've seen a lot of that happen back when I was in high school, and it's almost becomes a division of labor / division of population. Um, when I was in high school, we had a lot of division of people into groups versus it being like mixed and everyone's together learning. Um, and from what I've read, people naturally go into their own groups or they form groups or cliques. And I found that I wasn't really in any particular group myself when I was in high school. But, we had like the top group was these kids who were pretty much beyond high school ready. They were pretty much down to go into college at that beginning of high school. They were basically way over prepared. Parents, had coached them. Um, and, not only were they overperformers, they were always these like teacher pet type of people. Like we had one girl who was the daughter of the head professor of chemistry at the top university of Portugal. We had that in my honors chemistry class, and I shouldn't even have been in that class. I should have been in just standard chemistry because I don't know anything about chemistry. Neither does anybody else in my family at that time. We had that. Then I had these, group of Korean kids who were, these super geniuses. Then I had this one guy who was quiet in all of elementary and middle school, and then turns out he's this child of some like top executive at a power company or energy company. We also had, kids who were basically in this, like, what I call the top 1% of genius, or top 1% group. Then you had, kids who were working their butt off trying to get into these good schools, which is, I guess, more towards what I was into, but my results were not really in that of what the 1% was doing. Um, then you had your average people, which was like, and it was kind of based on, like, if you, for example, Spanish speakers, all the Spanish speakers were pretty much together in their own group. Then you had, like, the anime people who liked, cartoons, anime, and manga, video games, and all that, kind of in their own section. But I think the anime kids were in one group, and then video games were kind of in their own separate groups based on games. Because I know Minecraft, for example, just came out when I first started high school. Then, what else? What else? Yeah, because eventually, because when I kind of went from group to group, and then you had, like, the bottom of the barrel type of people. You had a lot of those, like, kids who don't belong in high school, kids who were pretty much um, like drug dealers, criminals, and gang related stuff. Then you had um, like your EC kids were their own group as well, and kind of so on and so forth. There were a group of kids who were always trying to, like, escape from school or walk out of school. We had a lot of those situations, or kids who would fight all the time. Um, we had all those kinds of groups, or kids who would always go to after school detention. We had a ton of that. But yeah, there's issues with, like, controlling of that, but you can't, it's hard to really control such a big student body population, especially once you start getting into, like, the multi-thousand schools. That's why, when I start seeing this stuff all thrown into one school, to me, it seems to make more sense to have, a general education school, and then you have specialty schools. And I think it makes more sense to have a general education school that has the option for kids to try out different subjects and to see what they like. And then once they know what they would like and what they want to pursue, that they can try over to a specialty school. But you don't really have much of that here in the US. Because of that, everybody kind of gets this standardized education, but people are not standardized. So yeah, I guess that's sort of a list of some general issues that we've had in my experience of high school. But yeah, let me know what kind of issues you all had. Things that you've noticed, problems you've had, why you think high school sucks. And, maybe we'll continue a part 3 with this series. We'll see how that works, what you all think. If you all want for me to talk about a specific subject, I'll be glad to talk about that as well. And glad to help as well. Another thing, though, we want to also ask you all, what do you prefer in terms of when we're streaming? Do you prefer, like, the webcam streaming where I'm talking about a subject, or would you rather prefer, like, the screen capture or screen, like the streaming option? Like, for example, we have OBS and Streamlabs as well, or a couple other different software where we just pretty much screen capture and we talk about different subjects. Like, I know the first episode we did, basically we streamed. In this episode, we're trying out the webcam, see how that goes. But yeah, let me know what you all think about that. Otherwise, guys, make sure to subscribe. We are on the way. We're close to 50 subscribers. We're at currently 46 subscribers. We're trying to get to over 50. So yeah, make sure to subscribe if you have not already. Like this video, and comment down below what your thoughts are. If you have recommendations for a channel, we're glad to read that as well. Otherwise, it's been Thigh Company here. Thank you all for watching, and we will see you all on the next episode. Thank you so much and take care.